little deeper. And no, I don't want to talk about it. Again, having compassion for them because it's triggering their survival, the reptilian brain.
My belief at the moment about suffering is that it's essentially just what we live with, and then happiness is fleeting. If
So,
I have a little help from
yeah,
my friend.
is is you can ask yourself at any moment, what part of my true self is being called forward in this moment? I'll repeat that. What part of my true self is being called forward in this moment? What that does, because sometimes we don't know, we might just we're in this, we're getting pulled into this meeting and we're like, wait, what? What is even happening? So, and we might not know what to do. So this is a great question to ask because ultimately, what I believe what's happening in our world in reality is honing us to become who we really are. So I find it may seem like cruel and unusual punishment to have all these traumatic experiences, but from a different perspective, and it's not to take away the trauma that can happen. At the same time, you can look at it from the perspective of these invitations um, from the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to say, putting you in situations so that you can be who you really are and be free of the shackles of those old patterns, beliefs, behaviors that we've had. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then this is an interesting concept because we've kind of touched about this true self coming out and small voice, big voice, whatever, trying to say, hey, I'm here. Like, this is why I feel that way. The piece of the trauma that follows almost. In the work environment, it's almost a specific, unique environment because you have these people who actually do have a dramatic amount of control over your life. Like, Caitlin, to your point, theoretically, I knew your employers. I worked for them too. Not so theoretically, if you were to say, this is inappropriate, I disagree with what you are doing. In fact, if you let me, I could take this team of 8, I believe it was. We can turn this around, but you need to trust me to do my job because I've done it for you before. They probably would have fired you after screaming at you and being nasty human beings. Frank, these are some interesting individuals, unfortunately. I'm sure they would be like a Gordian knot of interesting things. But in those environments, like there's a degree of control that people have over us. And I guess I get to ring the union bell early. Like this is kind of that scary thing. I feel like prevents a lot of people from wanting to unionize. I feel like unionizing is an act of empathy between all other workers, saying like, hey, I understand you're going through things. We work together to hold people accountable. How how can we improve on those moments so that in the future we can stand up and
Yeah, I
put
think that's a great question. I think what's also helpful, I was talking about exercising muscles
Mhm.
when I was talking with Caitlin about that. And so, if you want to really get familiar with yourself and really get to know what is it, Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. Um, and so it's really about getting honest as you can with yourself, right? So, what challenges, what are your specific challenges? What pushes your buttons? Um, you know, what beliefs no longer serve you? So you really want to get clear and honest with all these things because then you can prepare and you can practice. So if speaking up, for instance, was a challenge, well, you can practice that. You can role model and play with your friends and you can get into those roles. But Colin, wait, I was going to say something. What was it? Refresh my memory the question.
um in kind of a system where people have power over us, how do we kind of like
Oh
how
yeah.
can we yeah, that.
Yes. Okay. So what's also helpful to get clear on is who you are. What do you stand for? What are your values? And so it's great to have this before you go out in the world. So you want to get really clear. Am I an honest person? Do I fudge a little bit? Do I stand up for myself? Do I stand up for other people? How far am I willing to stand up for other people? Who would I like to be? So if we're not clear on that before going into situations, we're going to be we're going to be lost. We're going to be fumbling. We're going to be. But if we have a strong sense of who we are, who we want to be, or we want to reclaim within ourselves, then we can be prepared. So I always say this is so important to have this stuff figured out before going out in the world, really, because you're going to be tested. It's like, oh, okay, something's going to come up and say, hey, Colin, listen, I have this deal. I just don't want you to tell the other person. It's going to be a couple $1,000, but just please don't mention anything. And if you didn't have a clear sense of your integrity, you might get caught off guard. As, oh, okay, sure, but that's not who you are.
Yeah.
So, but if you were clear, if you had the clarity within you that no, and have an awareness of your body, because that will probably get triggered in your system. I'm sure, Caitlin, you probably got triggered when they told you that. So you have that awareness, and then you're able to respond and go with clarity. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that doesn't. I don't feel comfortable with that. And oh, okay. And back to what you said, Colin, earlier with what might happen if you spoke up. You very well may have gotten fired, but we don't really know,
That's
right?
true. That
And
is true.
here's the other thing: it doesn't really matter
Mm,
because when again, I'm talking at like a high level of integrity and value and self-esteem. So ultimately, it doesn't matter because you're not worrying about the outcome. I know that's easy to say, when you've got bills to
yeah.
pay and things. But the reason why I say it this way, because I'm sure each of you and any of the listeners will have the experience when you've done something that is truly a reflection of who you are in your essence. Even in the short term, it may feel scary, or you may have lost a job, but I will guarantee if you stay true to who you are, something better is going to come around the corner. Something more aligned is going to come around the corner. And it cannot not happen because when you are in alignment with who you are, you're in alignment with all there is. So you're really doing yourself a favor, or those situations are doing yourself a favor, because you had a mismatch anyway. When you're in a mismatch, you have very little access to all there is, if you will. When you're aligned with your true self, you have access to everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really like that you address that because in that moment, I mean, it very much was also like a self-preservation panic of, oh
Yeah.
my God, well, at least I'm the chosen one that can have a job at the end of the day. But also, I feel like there was so much like personal truth that I could have spoken in that moment that
Mhm.
if I would have at least said my piece because I knew they were going to make me fire all these people and then ask me to fix the site myself anyway, which I, of course, was asked to do. I could have at the very least spoken my truth and said, if you give me this much more time with my team, let me see what we can do. But instead I panicked and I just crumbled and I did what I would have probably had to do anyway, but like you said, we don't know. And I think there's concern of like a death of being fired. But if you're comfortable enough in yourself and what you have to say, to your point, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And as soon as this happened to me, like I found a therapist shortly after, and she's the one that not only introduced me to quiet quitting, but told me I needed to start quiet quitting. And I immediately started looking for other jobs because I knew this didn't align with me anyway.
So really funny tangential note on that. That must have been about when you and I first met.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, people told me like, "Oh man, she's really good at what she does." Da, 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 da. And I remember in the meeting, I was like, "Yeah, this person's checked out. There's like guard is up. Like I'm just gonna do my own thing."
Mhm.
And like that context, like, yeah, no, what I know about you now, you are insanely talented and an incredibly hard worker. I when I was terminated, the person who did that was very, very emotionless. And it took me calling that out in the meeting because I had nothing left to lose. So I was like, what are you gonna do? Fire me? Here's why this is inappropriate, and just lit into him. I would have felt better if that news had been delivered with empathy, like you did. Like I don't think personally, my opinion too is like crying's not a weak thing. Like it's you being vulnerable and honest. I would have preferred you firing me than the person who did, who tried to be
Yeah.
callous, who tried to be disconnected, and who lied to me multiple times to my face. I like 110% would prefer your, even if it would be sad, I'd be like, well, you're sad too. I know this is very legitimate, Not like, what do you mean? I just had an amazing review last week. What? Yeah. Oh,
And Frank, in your explanation of like, finding your true self and the virtues and the values that you want to display, I visualized a map almost of how to get there. And I want your input, and if I'm completely off base, then please tell me. I'm perfectly willing to be wrong, but in this case, it sounds like something along the lines of like a lack of awareness of your virtues and the ones that you're displaying leads to something like stress and anxiety. That leads to a lowered level of awareness because now all you're feeling is anxious, right? You don't really know how to act. You're just acting in an anxious manner because you're in fight or flight mode. You're just literally trying to survive.
Mm.
Once you start recognizing that, though, once you can get past the cloud, the fog, you start exercising the virtues, the muscles. Say you want to be more grateful, you start practicing gratitude more. You want to start having stronger willpower, you start practicing willpower more, stuff like that. And at every opportunity you're presented, you have a chance to display the virtues of who your true self is. In this instance, if you want to be grateful, you just pretend to be grateful, and eventually that will start to resonate with you. You start to actually feel it. And then this is the one thing that you didn't say. So I'm super like imposing this here, but
Yeah.
it it kind of sounded like at the end of it was almost like trusting yourself is almost like giving yourself to the universe, because like you were talking about how things that happen you don't really matter if you know who you are and what you are. And because if you know who you are and what you are, you already know where you're going to end up. You just know that things might get a little rough along the way. And if you know where you're going to end up, that sounds an awful lot like just sort of fate. But fate can really only come once you've determined what values and virtues you truly resonate with.
Yeah, nicely said. Um,
I
I
worked very
think,
hard on it while you guys were talking. I hope I wasn't
yeah,
distracted from anything over
you definitely have some skills. That's an essence quality of Charles right there, of taking in all that information and then piecing it together. So,
Oh, man, Caitlin's probably tired of me doing it, honestly. I do it to her all the time.
no, but that's an essence quality. And so what we find, what we're really doing is really, what do you say, when we're discarding what all the armor and stuff along the way that has been camouflaging our essence of who we really are. So it's really about reconnecting because we're already those things. Um, but we've just been disconnected to them for what we just talked about, for a variety of reasons, because it wasn't safe to be who we are. Ultimately, that's what it was. So along the way, we can also have some levity with it. So it's challenging. Give ourselves grace and compassion. So Caitlin, so going through that traumatic experience, I mean, that's not easy. And so then we could get upset, and we could go, gosh, why am I this way? Or why couldn't I have spoken up? Blah, blah, blah. So you want to give yourself some understanding, compassion. As I just shared, it made perfect sense for your system to act in the way that you did.
Mhm.
So you can just like, okay, give yourself a break. Um, and there was one other thing I was going to say about that. Oh yeah. So, and we can actually be appreciative of these what I was just sharing with you, these barriers, these personas that aren't who we are. However, we can have appreciation for those because at a certain time they worked. They kept us alive. They were there for us. So, in a weird way, we can have some appreciation for those for who we were. And we can now say, okay, thank you. That was you kept me through that at that time, but I'm ready to let that go because now it's interfering with your vitality and who you are and what you could be, um, how you could be engaging in the world. And what I was going to say also, so having some compassion for yourself and understanding how challenging it is to get through some of those traumatic experience and change those uh, those patterns. So give yourself compassion, which will make it actually easier to transcend those. Also, we can have archetypes. Back to Charles thinking about being more of who you are, we can have archetypes. So we might not be ready for like jumping into the arena of some, situation, but we can have an archetype, right? So, gosh, I love how blah, blah, blah acts in this certain way. Let me try that on. Let me breathe that in. How does that person, people, it doesn't have to be a famous person or it could be someone that you know. And gosh, wow, I love how Colin, you know, calls that out. I love how Charles just put all that together. I love how vulnerable Caitlin was. So let me learn from them. Okay. So how is that? Let me ask them if they're around. Hey, how do you handle a situation like this? Oh, okay. Because it's going to be foreign to us, you know? And so we got to get back into, you know, having getting along. What was Ringo Starr's help with my what was Ringo Starr's song?
Uh, get a little help from my friends,
Yes.
or get by with a little help from my friends. That's what
Yes.
it is. Get
So,
by with a little help from
yeah.
my friends.
So that's helpful. We don't have to be in it alone. We can use archetypes, we can use friends. And ultimately, we know our own truth. Sometimes it's not been, again, safe for ourselves uh, to really know that, or we think it's not safe. So we keep it at bay. You probably know some people are like, I don't want to talk about
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's like you start getting a little deeper and no, I don't want to talk about it. Again, having compassion for them because it's triggering their survival, in the reptilian brain. So it's in the flight or fight, as Charles brought up earlier. So, you know, um, it takes some courage. Um, and I think it's, who is it? Ines Nin, the poet, that says, finally, the pain. What's the blossom of the flower quote? Do you guys know this? And
I don't know that one.
it's
Just think of Star Wars references.
it's when the pain of
I could tell you a story about Diogenes, but that's about where my quote's at.
it was something like when the pain of not being who you are is greater than acting and changing. Finally there's an AA quote too. So it's like finally, when we're in so much pain and we've been traumatized so often, we're fed up and we're ready to change, right? But here's the thing. And a lot of people say this, well, change comes from suffering. People, you've heard that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not true. Suffering is just the great convincer to change. So, Colin, if I was saying, Colin, I want you to try this and this, and you don't want to, and then I get behind you and I'm twisting your arm and I say, Colin, are you going to do it? Colin,
Okay.
yes. So a lot of people think you have to suffer through. No, because suffering is just going to bring you to the table. Okay, now I'm ready. Suffering has nothing to do with your transformation or your willingness to change. It's just a convincer. You can forego the suffering. anybody listening right now can just go, oh, I'm going to be proactively shifting uh, this old belief or behaviors and actions. We can proactively do it. We can not only not have to suffer, we can have a good time doing it. We can have some fun. We can have some levity with it. So that whole thing is a falsehood.
Okay.
This.
So, go for it, Charles.
Oh, I just had a little point or a little note on the suffering because I think about suffering at a base level, as a base level emotion almost for the majority of people. But I think what you said actually refutes that in a really comprehensive way. Where um, my, I'll say currently held belief at the moment, yeah, whatever. My belief at the moment about suffering is that it's essentially just what we live with, and then happiness is fleeting. We're constantly just seeking for the next thing. That's what materialism is. We're just pushing for the next shiny thing. Um, but the way you described it almost makes it sound like something we can outrun if we have a confident enough like inner core almost. You can avoid the suffering in a way. You ever know someone who's just like really good at going with the flow in their life? You have no idea how. You've known them for 30 years. They just
Yeah.
happen to hit yellow
Yeah.
lights and green lights at every single point in their life.
Yes.
They're just always like a half click
Yes.
ahead of the suffering.
Yeah.
That I wonder if, and I've been curious about these people for as long as I can remember. I mean, like as like little kid, I would see
Yeah.
like my dad's friends, and they're 30 and like they're just like super confident and like everything and secure in everything they do. I've always been curious about where that comes from because it's always been a different kind of security. Now I'm getting a little bit off the point of suffering, but
Yeah. But you can like sense those people. Like you feel there's
yeah,
a difference to them. Like I can think of several people
like a
like that in my
solidity
life.
almost.
Yeah, like in my perception of it, they're bright and almost annoyingly so. Where I'm like, I'm trying to get there. Like